will go through the guidelines document that the commissioners approved this morning. I'll read through it, and a electronic copy of the signature, the one with the signature from the commissioners, will be coming to you later this afternoon. So following are the guidelines for developing the 2016 preliminary budget. The preliminary budgets are due to the auditor no later than August 10th of this year. Preliminary budgets from the auditor will then be presented on September 1st, and workshop sessions will be scheduled after that point, and hopefully we can come to a conclusion in early December and adopt the budget first week of December, which is, I believe, where we were last year. December 9th is when we adopted the budget last year. The goal of the 2016 preliminary budget presentation is to more effectively communicate the issues, concerns, and the needs of the citizens, the elected officials, and county departments as commissioners work to maintain or enhance service levels with our constrained resources. Towards this end, we appreciate everyone's cooperation. In previous years, the county has practiced a status quo budget. Basically, last year's budget, start with that, and that's what you have to work with, and come up with a preliminary budget that is equal to a status quo budget from the prior year. The budget process this year will be a baseline plus budget, where departments and offices are asked to build upon your existing budgets. In this year's process, we ask you to provide a brief narrative with your 2016 preliminary budget request. You are also asked to provide a financial summary, which includes some historical data, the 6/31/2015 approved budget, the current year 6/30 expenditures, and the 2016 budget request. What that is a small, last year we had a very complicated and complex accounting Excel spreadsheet. This year it's only going to be a one-page summary. It's not going to be line by line. It will have things like salaries, overtime, extra help coming to a salaries total. Benefits will be for a total of benefits, and operationally it'll be based on the character codes, supplies, services, intergovernmental, so it'll be just summaries of each of those rather than line by line detail in Excel. Obviously in Munis, which is where we're going to put our budgets, there we'll need to have the detailed line by line budget requests. This narrative and financial summary will be used as the basis for and in support of discussions during budget workshops. So in other words, the narrative component, which is something that we used to do years ago and we had attempted to get back on track with last year, it will be used to supplement the request to the commissioners of your preliminary budget, so that the information that is identified in the narrative as well as in the Excel spreadsheet will support the preliminary budget request. Each department program will submit a separate budget narrative at the department program level with a summation summary at the full department or office level. So within your departments where you have different programs, the narrative will define and address the program's budget request. So in the case of the sheriff's office, where they have a program for admin, they have a program for patrol, they have a program for jail, each one of those will be a separate narrative as well as Excel spreadsheet, with then a summary Excel spreadsheet to cover the entire budget request. The auditors will send an email with additional processing instructions that will be used to submit your 2016 preliminary budget with your Munis. The process to put it into Munis is very simple. There's, I think, a 2-page instructional pamphlet that the auditor's office will be sending out. In addition to that, we'll have a class or two in the next week or two that are available for people that need some extra help or that would like to just facilitate, to physically see how the process works. In order to better understand the needs and concerns of the elected officials and the county departments in the 2016 preliminary budget. So, stepping back, the submission of the 2016 preliminary budget in Munis will be due to the auditor on August 10th, and then the preliminary budget will be presented on September 1st. The request shall include a brief narrative that defines a mission and lists your 2015 accomplishments, and you'll have got a copy of all of this, so you don't need to write all of that down. Defines a list of your 2016 goals, which would be strategic, tactical, and operational goals. Defines any budget savings. If you're fortunate enough to be able to come up with something that can be a savings to your department, define what those are. Define your current budget issues. Things that you have mandated that are unfunded mandates, newly required training, specialized grant funding needs, and what those might be. So define what your needs are as specifically as you can. Include an organizational chart with an FTE count. And again, that's something that we have done in the past. We are doing what's called position control going forward in Munis, and we want to be able to compare and make sure that we have accurate numbers as far as FTE counts are concerned. List workloads, indicators with measurables. Now again, this is something we have done in the past. Define what the measurable is within your department. It could be numbers of building inspections, it could be numbers of calls for service, it could be something that measures the workload within your department's everyday operations. If you have difficulty as to defining what that is, I can go back to some of our historical records and find what the measurables were in prior years for your department. As well as we will ask for, within this narrative, we'll ask for a list of building maintenance and remodeling requirements that you may or may not, that you may need within your building. If there are a number of items, carpets that need to be replaced, or if there are things that need to be repaired for safety or structural reasons, please include that in the narrative. So the budget request is a baseline plus. What that is saying is you have a baseline which was last year's approved budget. And for salaries and benefits, there will be a section where you could add the increase that you may need for your department, whether it is operationally staffing or it's an increase for benefit costs or increases due to taxes and or state Department of Retirement or other types of cost increases. Each one of which will have a separate line on that spreadsheet. So we can go from what your current budget salary is and benefits and what the additions are for cost increases to a baseline plus request for salaries and benefits. Operationally, it'll be the same, where we'll have a subtotal as to what your baseline was for last year, plus whatever operational requests you may have, contract rate increases, new contracts that you may need to have. You may have additional training requirements, funded mandates for any number of other items. So anything that increases over your previous year's budget will need to be specifically identified and a number associated with that. On the revenue side, all taxes will be budgeted to reflect current year increases or decreases. So for the Treasury Department, anything that we're seeing increases, most specifically towards sales tax revenues and other sales tax related revenues, those will be budgeted at what the current rates are this year, not status quo. Property tax will be at whatever rate the property tax is allowed to go based on statute. Other service fees and revenues as far as volumes are concerned, if you're seeing the volumes go up, you can budget for your additional projected volumes. I don't believe we have any service fees increases that are approved at this point in time, so it won't be service fee rates that will be increasing, but volumes may be increasing. New grants. If there are any new grants that are being considered, please bring it forward, and most importantly, include information as to what the matching contribution requirements are, if any. Expenditure levels. The preliminary budgets for elected offices and departments will be baseline or at baseline levels. All increases will be requested and be defined in the spreadsheet provided and included in the narrative. So if you are looking for increases for expenditure levels, again, they need to be on the spreadsheet as well as included in the narrative to define exactly what it is, why, and how much is going to be included. The rate sheets, ER&R rates, L&I rates, and Social Security, Medicare, DRS, and medical rates, that'll be included in our rate sheets, which will be submitted to everybody on July 17th. We can get it this week, so we're going to push for it this week. That'll include, on the rate sheet will also be unemployment and the charges for financial system upgrades. Follow your union contracts for general wage, step, and COLA increases for union employees. The June to June 30, the June to June U.S. All Cities COLA rate will be supplied again via email on July 17th. Any increases will be defined in Section A on the spreadsheet. Across the board, wage increases for elected official and non-represented shall be 2%, plus what the COLA, 80% of the COLA increase, that again will be supplied on January 17th. Include all increases on anniversary dates for step increases, and a county-wide medical contribution increase will go up to $11.02, which is a $52 increase. The auditor will supply the benefit rate sheet again on July 17th, and that will include all of the taxes, benefits, medical costs, and costs for other expenditures. For indirect charges, please use last year's rates. For state auditor cost allocations, again, please use last year rates. And the preliminary budget request is due to the auditor on August 10th. But the narratives and those spreadsheets will be due to me by September 1st. Questions? Any questions? Nobody?
Do you want me to supply the ER&R rates to you or to each department?
To me,
Okay.
please.
I have one question. When you talk, this is never, I never totally understood, I guess, what's being asked and why. When you're talking about salaries, for instance, it sounded like you said to start with the existing status quo, and then there's a separate column for
Increase.
where next, I mean, but then also, I mean, there are contracts that we have to follow. So what we pay,
Contracts
what
would
we pay a particular, what I pay, what a particular deputy prosecutor is paid this year is going to be different next year.
Correct.
So why would we put in a budget request that has an amount that is clearly insufficient to pay that employee, and then call an increase when we're also talking there about
We're not calling it as an increase as much as what we're doing is asking you to segregate those dollars for us so that we have where we were last year and what the contractual increases are.
So that we'll also have knowledge of exactly what the changes will be occurring and what it will look like. One of the things I'm going to throw in myself, and I'm just telling you my opinion, I'm not speaking on behalf of the commission. I'm hoping, for example, by doing it the way we're doing it, we're going to have it be very simplistic. In the past, some of you have turned in some budgets that, you remember the beginning when we first started, we went over everybody's budget, every line, and we had to learn how to do it because we didn't know. We started. But then we've also learned that some of you are extremely good at what you do and put it together and make it very simple. I'm hoping for the most part that with this structure, it's going to be as simple as looking at it, reading it, and hopefully the idea of moving it forward instead of making everybody go through hoops, except for maybe having an opportunity for the public to have one bite at it if it's something simplistic. And the ones that are a little more difficult, there'll be more work that has to go in with it. By doing this process, we'll have a better idea of what it is without having to ask you, without having to bring you in and separate it and beat it all up. That's one of the things that I'm looking for.
So what then gets, and I really am just trying to understand, and if now's not the best forum, then let me know, but what do we do with that other column then? Whatever you call it, increase or whatever the amount is that it's actually going to cost, when we know it's going to
It's a
cost more?
baseline plus.
Right.
So we know what the baseline is, which is this year's number. And then you're adding to that contractual increases, tax increases, medical care increases, coming up to your preliminary budget request.
But what does that help us do by doing it that way? I guess, is that number is going to tell you what this one position is over last year.
Not by position, this is in total. So again, the summary Excel spreadsheet isn't similar to what it was last year.
Okay.
It's a summarization of what we had last year. So all of your salaries are X dollars. All of your salary increases are plus $100. All of your tax increases are plus another $200, so that we can go from what was your baseline, add the incrementals. Because one of the big things that I find that looking at budget projections from year to year, I can't go back to the whys, other than to know it's an incremental $500,000 increase. I don't know if it's salaries, I don't know if it's increases in medical costs or tax increases that are driving the numbers to move.
And can I just add to that? And so it makes it very difficult for us to understand what the cost of doing business increases are versus our program enhancements or enhanced services. Because I think we need to get a good handle on what our assumptions are for 2% increase year over year, because this is what it costs to do business. And to be able to separate those from what it's.
And that's what I'm just trying to understand what it is we're gaining or what we're doing it for, because, I mean, what we're legally required to do is to provide what we need to run the office and to provide a detailed
correct.
estimate of the expenditures and revenues that will
But
support that.
understanding why those are and what are the drivers that are driving the increases or decreases, whichever may be the case, is very helpful in being able to long-term plan for what our needs are going to be and what our costs are going to be 5 years down the road.
And then what you'll still be entering your budget request in Munis in the same way that you used to. But this gives us an ability to not only for this year, look at what are we doing to enhance versus what is the increase, but it gives us better history to be able to go through.
And it's no additional work, because you still have to come up with what those increases are. And you'll go through the process in your budgeting cycle to define how much is a salary increase for new contracts, or what my projection is for a cost this year versus last year, based on either rates or volumes. And you can define that because my volume is going up, this contract is going to increase, and it's going to increase by $5,000 or whatever the dollar amount.
Frank, have you seen a copy of that yet? Have they seen it? I know we have seen. So I,
We have
oh, that makes a difference, because
It'll come out today with the
yeah,
rest, but it's just a simple one
simplifies it
page.
completely down.
And it really is at a summary level in that salaries, overtime, other wages, and benefits.
Okay.
So that's your baseline, and then what your increases are.
Because sometimes in the past it has been, you know, submit your budget at what you know won't run it, and then put everything else in a supplemental, and I can tell you, I've been real hesitant to ever do it that way, because I've got a responsibility to say, this is what I have to run the
And this is
office.
kind of somewhere in between.
Okay.
Submit your budget at what it is that you need, but give me enough information so that I can understand, or the commissioners can understand, what are the increases, what are the drivers that are driving the increases, so that we can determine what those incremental increases are going to be in a longer-term study or an analysis of where we're going for costs. What our costs are going to
For
be
most
5
of
years
us,
from now.
those increases and the
Are
what's driving
dictated
those
by your
increases are
contracts.
based on decisions that the commissioners
Yeah.
are
Exactly.
making.
Yeah, and that's, we're gonna,
Absolutely,
Yeah.
there's no argument.
Yeah, I know, I'm not arguing that, I'm just saying that's.
and we're gonna see that right away, Mike. As a matter of fact, yours is one of the ones I expect, if you've done like you've done in the past.
Yeah.
Yours is gonna be one of the simpler ones to go through, because you don't usually have a bunch of stuff that you're trying to do on the outside. And
Yeah,
So
ours
yours is,
pretty consistent, yeah.
yeah, so yours is gonna be one of the ones that this system's gonna benefit for us, at least as commission, to be able to move forward. Now, at the end, when we put them all together, that's what's gonna really look like it. We have to make the big tough choices at that time. But most likely, and again, I'm just speaking for myself, we should be able to continue moving the way we've been moving without a bunch of stuff falling apart at the end. At least I think that's what it looks like financially. We'll know better at the end. And if so, then most of it's gonna be very simple. Please.
But by hiding costs, by not putting them forward, doesn't help the analysis in understanding what our costs are. All it does is, it just reduces the amount of understanding as to what are the drivers within each of the departments as for those costs that have to increase.
And I just wanted to also ask you to be very careful and deliberative about your choosing of your workload indicators, because another way we want to see, try to measure the cost of doing business is the cost per unit served. And be able to identify kind of our cost drivers that way, and it's an easier way to talk to the public about, you know, for every building permit, it actually costs X amount of dollars in other costs, and be able to talk to the public about what it costs to run. So please be very deliberate and careful about that, and if you have some suggestions or you want to run some ideas, we'd love to hear, you know, them.
Actually, I'll throw one more on top of that for myself. Imagine we have, after you see what he has, it'll help with what you're thinking. When you're looking at us next year or during the year, we're talking, meet in the hallway, and you say, you know, I've had this idea I've wanted to do, and this is what it looked like. This is where it would fit real easy for us to be able to understand it, to be able to understand the money moving out or moving back in, and what that change would look like. It'd be a way to simplify it, and then you're able to break down and show how the benefit would be. So hopefully this helps us move things in the future and simplify the future, not just today.
Yeah, just to clarify that, I think this is the first year that what you enter into your preliminary budget that's submitted to our office is what you need to operate your office. And then their spreadsheets is to justify those numbers. And it's separate and it's a month later, so it's not all commingled, and it should be much smoother. So that's what you enter.
And to add to that is the opportunity to put things in writing within the narrative.
Yeah.
That narrative should be what you bring forward at your workshop briefing, so that nothing is new at that point in time to the commissioners. They've already had an opportunity to read through these are the things that are changing, these are what my needs are, this is why my budget request went up $10,000 or what have you. And so that interaction becomes more informative rather than the way it was last year, which was somewhat disjointed in, there was an education process. And part of that had to do with me because I needed to understand what all of the departments, how their transactions or how their activity went. But this year, it's much easier if that's the vehicle that you use to kind of set the base for what your briefing is going to be. And have it supporting information in that narrative and the spreadsheet to have a much more meaningful conversation at briefing time.
Wouldn't it be nice if the commissioners were are doing things at the level they're probably supposed to, considering where we've done it in the past? Maybe that might just mean a lot less stupid questions from me. You know, so that's one of the hopes.
Understood?
Just clarification, total labor costs, or in my particular case, do I need to break it down for the 109 employees by program or division?
By program, yeah.
Thank you.
But in ours, like just alone in our deputies, with the $300,000 increase in their contract that's already negotiated,
That's the plus.
yeah.
That's
I
the
mean,
plus.
That's gonna be,
Yes, see, that's the plus component.
And it's really easy for us to see that in this format. We can see it just plain as day, and we shouldn't have to have that discussion. We shouldn't have to beat it
Yeah,
up.
with the narrative too.
Yeah, we shouldn't have to beat it up and say, explain this to me, because it will already have been done. All this stuff we've done in the past will be beneficial, because now we at least have a clue what we're doing.
My question is,
Darcy?
we've always been told to like hold the line to the 630 budget. Since it's baseline plus this year, are we allowed to increase in operating as long as we explain it really well? Because we've
That's
held
the
it.
purpose, good.
That's the plus.
Okay.
That's the plus.
I just wanted to be clear.
You'll have your base, and that shows us where you
Yeah.
were and what you, the pluses is, yeah.
And we typically only do that within our salaries and whatnot, so I just wanted to make sure that if we could do it in operating
There's a
without
component
trying to
where,
assume that.
within your operating request, you have contract increases.
But we're not being asked to assume it within the total.
Not for your preliminary budget
Awesome, that's all I wanted.
request.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Well,
Thank you very much.